Welcome back to Movies TV Mad and welcome to Wednesday's edition of the DCU Daily. James Gunn and Peter Safran were the wrong people to lead the newly formed DC Studios, which anyway was nothing more than a logo rather than a studio. Unfortunately, Zaslav wanted total control of DC Studios, so you basically needed two people that you could control. You needed a writer-director that didn't care about his artistic integrity. Now it's interesting because all his career, or a lot of his career, especially at Marvel, James Gunn was allowed to do exactly what he wanted as long as he played a little bit of ball with Feige. But it was a mistake. These guys were the wrong people to take it over. But the reality is, it doesn't matter who was going to run DC Studios, the logo, because Zaslav was always going to be pulling the strings behind the scenes. A man, as I keep on saying, with no scripted entertainment experience, and this is what you get. A Superman film like this, that's had the heart cut out of it. 20 to 30 minutes cut out of it. But I don't believe, even if you put that 30 minutes back in, it's a better movie. James Gunn was never suited to make a Superman movie. Give him 3 Guardians of the Galaxy? Brilliant. Give him a Suicide Squad movie? Brilliant. I love all those movies. Give him Peacemaker? Brilliant. Give him Creature Commandos? Brilliant for the people who appreciate that type of thing. Give him Waller? Brilliant. Give him Batmite? Brilliant. Do it. Do it all. Do all that shit. He should have his own little bit of DC Elseworlds. Not running DC Studios. Let Gunn do all that childish shit, right? It's great. I loved it. I actually enjoyed the Suicide Squad. The DCEU movies that I loved were Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, low-key loved the first Suicide Squad, adore Wonder Woman, adore Aquaman, actually one of the greatest achievements in comic book movie history. And I'll talk about James Wan very, very shortly, because he's important. He and Dan Lin are very important in this situation. Because Gunn's good. Gunn's good. Gunn can entertain you. But you don't give him a Superman movie and you don't give him free reign over the DC universe. He's not a studio head. And basically, Peter Safran isn't a studio head. These are not people you give control of the DC universe. It was always going to end this way. I think we need to move away from the conversations about the Superman box office, Man of Steel versus Superman, all of that, it's pointless. This is what's going to happen. It will make what it's going to make for 50, 500, 550, maybe 600, who the fuck knows at this stage. And they're going to spin it as a win. Even Kevin Feige is calling, the Marvel Studio CEO is calling Superman a success. Apparently, if you look in the mirror and say Superman was a success 3 times, everyone believes it. Should we try it? Superman was a success. Superman was a success. Superman was a fucking success. I'm not buying it because that only works on the weak-minded, not the strong-minded. So we know, look, I'm not going to say to you that Superman financially is a total disaster, but it can't be what they wanted. It's clear, domestically, it did okay, but internationally, it's a fucking disaster. There's no spinning it. And Gunn's making excuses about anti-American sentiment and saying that not many people in countries away from America actually have heard of Superman before. James, that's bollocks, and you know that's fucking bollocks. David Goyer, during the promotional run of Man of Steel, said it best. The Superman insignia, the Superman logo, is as recognisable as the Christian fucking cross. Everyone knows who fucking Superman is. Everyone knows who Bond is, right? Everyone knows who certain characters are. And, it's a grift. This is what I was saying yesterday. they're not willing to look in the mirror and say, maybe I got it wrong, right? I don't think he got everything wrong, but he got a lot of things wrong in his Superman movie. Instead of saying, you know what, the truth, maybe we should have been a little bit more sophisticated with our writing. Maybe we should have done that, but they're not honest. I think they used to be a lot more honest about films that underachieved financially and were not good enough and were not embraced by certain parts and sections of the audience. And I think these days they're dishonest. There's more of an ego. They can't admit to their mistakes. So Gunn and Safran were the wrong people to put in charge. But you see, this is why I've spoken about the differences between Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige and what's going on at the DC Studios logo. Basically, you've got Zaslav pulling the strings, but Kevin Feige is absolutely in control of Marvel Studios. In fact, since he became president of Marvel Studios, that's when Marvel Studios' real problems began. When he was merely the guy in charge of creativity, it was better. But then he became a bureaucrat, a studio head. And he's not really a bureaucrat. He doesn't really know how to run a studio. And that's where it's been wrong. Decisions he has made have been wrong for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's the same with Gunn. Because Feige and Gunn come from the same, roadhouse. They come from the same mentality. They want to direct directors. That's why Gunn's attempted to get auteurs like Ben Affleck and the guy who was going to do Sergeant Rock. And we'll never know if he was ever going to do Sergeant Rock, if Daniel Craig was ever going to play Sergeant Rock. I think it's all bollocks just to create hype. And I mean, even now, Gunn is talking about an unexpected follow-up to Superman. So I've said that should be announced really quickly to try and keep interest cinematically and in the box office for Superman right now. But we will see. As I say, I don't see Superman as a financial disaster, but it's clear that when you look at profitability, there's not much there. A disaster is 330 million. A disaster would be, under 400 million right now. So it's clear Superman's not a disaster domestically, but it's a fucking disaster internationally. And ultimately, it has underachieved financially, whatever way you look at it. But this was always going to be the case. What happened with Snyder is going to haunt them until the day they die. It's going to haunt them. Until they say, right, let's finish off the Snyderverse. And the real time to finish off the Snyderverse is when they were making it. We wouldn't be here now. Zack would have done what he was going to do. He would have given them a little flashpoint so they can reset the universe, and they could have done any shit that they wanted. This whole thing with Snyder has been the thing that's been holding DC back for a very long time. The Snyderverse fans are not going anywhere, no matter how much you hate them, maybe they annoy you with all the stuff that they say, but they're not going anywhere. And that's the reality, whatever you think of them. This is not going away until Snyder is allowed to come back and finish what he started. And that's the reality of this situation. And that's why the box office has been somewhat underwhelming, because the poison the Snyderverse fans have been spreading is working. In terms of the international audience, they were happy with Cavill, they were happy with Snyder. They didn't want this. It's basically a thumbs down to the DCU, DC Studios, and James Gunn. And he can keep on trying to spread his fake hype and about new projects, but the reality is, you have to ask the question as well. The reality is here that this hasn't been the greatest of beginnings. But you can ask a question, has it launched the DCU in a good way, a bad way, a midway? For some people, this will be great. For some people, they're very excited about the future. And for other people, they're not excited about the future. They want Snyder, or they want something else. I think it's a very, very interesting situation. Because the problem is, even the movies that Gunn isn't writing, he's going to ghostwrite them. He's going to give notes. he's directing the directors, you're going to get the same shit every time. Look at the Supergirl poster and her, sucking on that drink. It's still the Gunnerisms, even when he's not directing or writing it, because he's running the show, the Gunnerisms are going to remain. So you're going to see the same type of thing as Superman. And it's interesting, isn't it? Let's discuss James Wan and Dan Lin. Gunn's biggest mistake was not playing nice with James Wan during the production of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And the studio drove him away. Now listen, James Wan is one of the best horror directors. Imagine giving him Clayface, which they want to do as an R-rated movie. Is there anyone more suited than James Wan to make a DC comic book adaptation of Clayface? No, there's fucking not. The achievement of what he did with Aquaman was amazing. It came after the disaster that was Justice League. I'm sure many of the general audiences around the world and even domestically thought, I'm done with DC. But people came in to watch that movie and it made $1 billion. It's such a good movie. Visually, it's beautiful. Narratively, it's beautiful. Jason Momoa is a great Aquaman, as he was in the Justice League. Even in Justice League, he was one of the better things about that. He's brilliant and even better in Zack Snyder's Justice League. He's always been a great Aquaman. Instead of allowing him to remain Aquaman, because that's not what Gunn wanted, they made him a new character in the DCU. And, when you think about what he's going to be doing in Supergirl, right, I'm not sure if it's going to be that big a role. And we may never see him in the DCU again. As I say, it's a bribe, so he wouldn't be causing waves, right? Because Jason Momoa does talk when he wants to. So they didn't want a problem there. So they gave him the role, they gave him another DC character, and now he's going to be doing that in Supergirl. I don't think it's a very, very big role, but we'll see what happens in the future. Is there a future for the DCU? Because for me, it's not looking too good. I've said this many times. James Wan and Dan Lin would have done amazing, magical things at DC Studios. The bigger problem here isn't Gunn and Safran, it's Zaslav. Because as I say, he is pulling these strings. And until he stops pulling these strings, nothing's going to change. It was him who insisted on Superman launching DC Studios and the DCU. And Superman's my favourite character, most favourite character in fiction. But at the end of the day, he was the wrong character to launch this. As I said many times, I think Green Arrow would have been perfect to launch the DCU. And perfect for Gunn. If you read the original 60s Green Arrow comics, it has the kind of James Gunn vibe about it. James Gunn would have been perfect to do a Green Arrow movie. That's the kind of thing you should have launched it with, because it's less pressure for Gunn and everyone. And if it brought in $500 to $600 million, that would have been great, because a Green Arrow movie isn't going to cost as much money as a Superman movie. You could make a Green Arrow movie with $100 million or just under $100 million production budget, and get away with it. So that's what I would have done. But instead, they did the same thing as the DCEU, launch with Superman. And the challenges with Superman is there's a lot of pressure that comes with one of the most famous characters in fiction. And I'll take him up, and I'll take apart what he said about you can't have an all-powerful Superman if you want a Green Arrow in your universe. That's bollocks, because Superman can't be everywhere. It doesn't matter if he's all-powerful. It doesn't hurt the effect that a character like Green Arrow can have. So again, it's a bollocks statement. Turning Superman into Beta Man is one of his biggest mistakes of all. And there's a lot of problems with this Superman movie. There's a lot of problems with Gunn and Safran running DC Studios. But as I keep on saying, it is my belief that one head has to roll. Gunn's head is too big a head to roll. because that admits defeat, that admits they were wrong, and gives the Snyderverse stands exactly what they want. And WB are not willing to do that quite yet. But if they lie and say that Peter Safran quit, but they really fired him, they can spin that a lot better. So I wouldn't be surprised if Peter Safran gets the blame for the underwhelming box office of Superman.